What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Thank you guys so much for coming back to the channel, and if you guys are new, welcome. Now today we're going to be taking it to a solar hunting build using, I don't know really how to pronounce these, but the Athrys. Embrace those nice weighted knife bounces twice, deals bonus damage, those exotic gauntlets for our hunter, allowing us to also stun unstoppable champions. So this thing, pretty nice for giving us a good little melee build for the solar synergy that we have this season with our artifact. So we'll get right into it. First off, right here you can see we got the skittering stinger. So weighted throwing knives gain a second bounce, rapid precision hits of our weapons grant weighted bowing knives a significant damage increase, bonus strength, and the ability to stun unshielded combatants for a short time, which also allows us to stun unstoppable champions. So when we get defeats with our weapons, overpowers our knife, allowing it to do some pretty crazy damage on those enemies. Now for mods as well as the stats that we're going for me, I'm going with resilience, recovery, as well as discipline on this. Intellect is nice as well for having that little bit of extra damage in blade barrage, but we're going to be able to dodge very often and have our throwing knife up because of gamblers, so you will see in a second with that. Now, on to our mods. First off, heavy ammo finder, so we can keep up our heavy game. Next off, hands-on, of course, so we can get our super back even faster with that throwing knife, as well as just going to be that weighted juicer of a throwing knife because of our arms. Now, we're going to be using harmonic siphon, so our solar weapons gives us orbs of power. Heavy-handed as well, so we can get orbs of power as well through those melee defeats, not just additional super energy. Impact induction as well as focusing straight, so all of the damage that we create with our throwing knife will give us our grenade as well as our dodge back. On our chest piece, we got concussive with arc and solar, totally depends on what you're going into. Next off, a lethal charge right here, or elemental charge. Collecting fire sprites for us has the chance to give us that nice armor charge, which we are using for this font of a restoration, giving us a little extra in our recovery right there when we have that. On top of that, we're going to be using recuperation, orb of restoration right here, so when we pick up orbs of power, get a little bit of energy for our at least full ability, as well as a little bit of health each time we pick those up. Right here, outreach, every time we use our melee, we get the class ability to regen a little bit, or that is vice versa. Every time we dodge, we get our melee back with Reaper, allowing us to create even more orbs of power. Moving on to our weapons. Right here, one of my favorite weapons ever for this game is the ignition code with disorienting grenades, slide shot, and vorpal, so you can just slide along, especially for this little hunter here. Get everything to proc with the reload, get that vorpal, as well as disorienting grenades. On top of that, a nice little solar weapon with heal clip incandescent, allowing us to spread scorch very easily, as well as heal ourselves with that heal clip. Now, the cream of the crop, the king of the weapons, almost 15,000 weapons enemies defeated with this thing, with the Jallarhorn, as they say, giving us the DPS aspect of this build on top of our super. Now, just like most of our solar builds, focusing on this little chunk right here with the solo operative as well as overload pulse. So not using this time, but flint striker, kindling trigger, torch, heart of the flame, revitalizing blast, raise of precision. So flint striker gives us the ability to make ourselves radiant with those solar precision rapid hits or rapid defeats, with kindling trigger allowing us to spread even more scorch while we are radiant, as well as torch. With being radiant, we deal increased damage to combat combatants affected by Strand and Stasis. Hopefully one of our teammates is running one of those for a debuff. On top of that, we're going to be using Heart of the Flame, so when we cast our Solar Super, we're going to make our allies radiant, as well as allowing it to do more damage. So Galahorn with those throwing knives, and the Blade Barrage is going to give us some nice DPS from this build. Revitalizing Blast, we are weakening targets with our solar abilities, so those champions, bosses, stand no chance, especially against that empowered weighted throwing knife. Raise the precision while radiant. Solar precision final blows cause ignitions for those combatants, as well as solo operative. We're going to be doing a little bit more damage when it's just us in an activity. Last but certainly not least for this build, using Blade Barrage for our super for that DPS with the combination of Gambler's Dodge. Weighted throwing knife is important for our exotic, but that's the combination that we're going to use, is Dodge to get our knife back, and then which applies to knock them down. At the bottom, well radiant final blows with your equipped throwing knife fully refund our melee energy, so we're going to have this up consistently. We're going to be using Incendiary Grenade with triple jump. Incendiary definitely by far the best for Scorch, which you will see why in our fragments. Now for me, on your mark, I'm using it personally for the 3 fragment slots, as well as that reload that we get from dodging is super nasty in my opinion, especially when we're using our weapons to empower our weighted throwing knife. We want to reload and have that up as much as possible. Now in combination with that, for our fragments, Ember of Empyrean, we're going to get that increase to restoration and radiant when we get those solar weapon or ability final blows, so we're going to get that to proc very easily, especially because of that weighted throwing knife. Ember of Mercy, picking up those fire sprites grants us restoration, or when us revive an ally or somebody else nearby, they also gain that restoration, so a nice little healing aspect of this build. Ember of Searing, defeating Scorch targets grants melee and creates fire sprite, so very easy for us to get this to proc with our artifact, our solar weapons, as well as just what we have going on down here. Next off, Ember of Torches, we also become radiant by those powered melee attacks, which is why we're going to have this up at all times, basically because of the dodge as well as knock them down. And last but not least, our Solar Ignition spreads Scorch to the affected areas, which allows us to get even more of the fire sprites back, which gives us our melee back, give us restoration. So the way I kind of chain this build together is make sure to wipe out a couple enemies, those red bars, with your weapons to get the empowered throwing knife to proc. Then you go up to your yellow orange bar enemies, do a little bit of damage on them, throw that knife, dodge, throw that knife, and then they should be defeated. You can also get yourself radiant by just continuously using that weighted throwing knife on some of the red bar enemies, and then when we do need to do DPS to those big bosses like Oryx, something like that, we got our Blade Barrage as well as our Galahorn. So very good, well-rounded build for basically any type of content you have to go into. You could take this into GMs if you wanted. You could take it into just Riven's Lair. You could do some normal things with it, blind well, but it is a very versatile and very good build. Definitely most people attribute these arms to the PvP realm, using those throwing knives in those small cornered maps, but actually not too terrible, especially since we can stun unstoppable champions with them on top of it. So try this out, my Solar Hunters. We got a lot of season left, so definitely a lot of interesting and more out there builds, if you will, than our meta, which we've already covered for this season, but all of these will work just as well. So thank you guys again. Discord down in the description, all of my socials. Truly appreciate all you guys for continuously coming back to the channel again and again. So appreciate you guys. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.